Benedictines of Fontainebleau. You might be familiar with these French Benedictines. They have founded a monastery in Oklahoma, Clear Creek. Then other essays, an essay on the veiling, the revelation through veiling in the old liturgy, an essay on the veneration of the sacrament of the altar and the Missal of Trent. But this first thing I would like to read to you, like a kind of prologue of this book. This was not written for the use of lectures in the circuits of the traditionalist Catholics. This was written for a magazine of literature, Das Kursbuch, whose readers and authors are very far from the church. And so keep in mind while hearing that this is written for persons which have very few experience with Christianity and particularly Catholicism. This little piece title is Eternal Stone Age. I am not a convert or a proselyte. I have had no sudden and spectacular illumination. My roots in religion were feeble for a long time. I cannot say with any certainty when they began to grow. Perhaps it was when I reached 25. At any rate, slowly, but surely they did begin to grow. I am inclined to think that these roots are deep by now and are continually growing, though, as before, in a way that is hardly ascertainable. What set this process in motion, a process that has not yet reached its end, was my acquaintance with the old Catholic liturgy. My Catholic mother kept her distance from religion. My Protestant father maintained his right to his own private priesthood and defended it with iron discretion. Initially, I learned very little about Catholic ritual because the preparation for the liturgy we received, supposedly suitable for children, practically obscured it with hymns saturated with optimism and pseudo-naive prayers that could accommodate Latin prayers of sometimes opposite tendencies. As an altar boy, I was the object of dread, since I had not grasped the structure of the rite and was always making myself a nuisance by doing unexpected things and forgetting important ones. One day, while the priest was praying, I snatched a huge missal from under his nose, intending to carry it to the other side of the altar. It was what was altogether the wrong moment, tripped on my violet cassock, which was too long for me, and fell down the altar steps together with the book. That was the end of my career as an altar server. My religious life became rather pale after that, although the feeling of being a Catholic stayed with me. When I was 18, I read the famous utterance of Charles Maurras. I am an atheist, of course a Catholic atheist. I liked that. I used to take pleasure in quoting it. It sounded rather daring. At that time, I had no idea what atheism was, for I had an infinite trust in the world's goodness and beneficial order. For the Catholic religion, I could not know what it was, because no one had really told me. The Catholic religion is probably the most complicated religion in the world. To be Catholic, one needs either to be a recipient of special grace or to have a great deal of knowledge, and I am a long way from either of these. When I was 18, the the Catholic Church too was going through their own 68 trails. I was not very aware of this, for I was not longer going to Mass. But I heard people say that the priests had taken off their black suits and cassocks and went about dressed in a somehow petty bourgeois civilian way, some more like students, some more like the clerks in a post office. There was no more Latin in the Mass. The priest no longer stood facing the altar, but stood behind it as if he were behind a counter. The congregation had become the priest's audience, and he looked at them and happily bawled the hymns at them. At communion, he put the host into their hands, not on the tongue as formerly. The people I knew welcomed these innovations as something long overdue, but even my mother was quite definite that no one had to attend that kind of thing. I recalled similar conversations with older Catholics who were clearly pleased with the reforms, while at the same time being quite determined that they would not be going. What first drew my attention to the Catholic liturgy was the ancient Catholic music, Gregorian chant. I can anticipate the superciliousness of certain readers at this point. Ah, yes, this man's an artist trying to satisfy his aesthetic needs through religion. I admit quite openly that I'm one of those naive folk who look at the surface, the external appearance of things, in order to judge their inner nature, their truth or their spuriousness. The doctrine of supposedly inner values hidden under a dirty and decrepit shell is something I find highly suspicious. I already believe that the soul imparts a form, a face, a surface to the body, even before I learned that it was a truth defined by the Church's teaching authority. Consider me a Mediterranean primitive, but I do not believe a language that is untrue, full of deceit and lacking in feeling can contain ideas of any value. What applies in art must apply to a far higher degree in public prayer of the Church. If in ordinary life, ugliness shows us the presence of untruth, in the realm of religion it may indicate something worse. Gregorian chant is not art music. It exists to be sung in every village church and in every suburban church, in spite of the fact that some of it is difficult and requires practice. And people did practice it, hearing it every Sunday all their lives. Only later did I realize, however, that the liturgy and its music must not be regarded as an occasionally edifying or impressive concert or as a help toward meditation. No, it is something that must be practiced one's whole life long. The obligation to go to church every Sunday should be seen in connection with the liturgy. The liturgy must permeate our lives at a level deeper than liberation and thought. It must be something that for us is taken for granted. Otherwise it cannot have its full effect on us. The reform, or rather the type of revolution